Hello, once again. Welcome to Table Talk. A little bit later than normal this week. We were under strict instructions not to disturb our children with noisy talking early in the morning, but nonetheless, I have angered my children with my noisy movements.
Yes, just to give you a little picture of how that happened, is that Matthew does not know how to move around the house quietly.
I'm stealthy.
He's not stealthy.
Stealth like a
He
cat.
was out on the drive crunching around doing various things and then got in the car and moved the car a little bit because... Why did you move the car?
It was blocking the sunshine on my tomato plant.
It was blocking the sun on his tomato plant, and then in a fit of great excitement, having watched Monty Don on Gardeners World last night, he was at B&Q early buying various bits and pieces. So, yes.
The trouble is that, look, sweet peas. Garden's coming along nicely. Always makes my mother very cross. She can't grow sweet peas. Look, Mum.
So anyway, yes.
The trouble is my neighbour usually gets up to go on a bike ride at 5:30 in the morning, and so I hear him opening the garage, and there's a very distinctive sound of cycling shoe cleats engaging with the pedal, and it's like a Pavlovian response when I hear that. I just up and...
A what response?
Pavlovian.
What does that mean? You want to eat some pavlova?
Well, I would quite like to eat some Pavlova. And like Pavlov's dogs, the just instinctive response.
Oh, okay.
I hear the sound of a
idea what he's talking
cycling cleat engaging, and I should be out cycling. So I wake up, and because the days are so nice and light, I like to be up a bit earlier anyway. But anyway, my kids are furious, despite the fact that it's nearly 10 o'clock now before we've even started this.
Yes, the reality is he wakes everybody up, see?
Despite being stealthy as a cat.
So then I lie there thinking I can't sleep any longer, so I have to get up. Never mind. I've pruned the roses, so it's all good.
It's all domestic bliss.
I hope you like in the background. We're actually sitting at the same table, but just on the other side of it, just to mess with your heads.
Extraordinary. Right, shall we read the psalm?
Yeah?
Psalm 76.
How are we doing it?
Well, we should do it by reading it. Should we do alternate stanzas?
Yeah, go on then.
I'll kick off.
All right.
Psalm 76 for the director of music with stringed instruments, a psalm of Asaph, a song. God is renowned in Judah. In Israel his name is great. His tent is in Salem, his dwelling place in Zion. There he broke the flashing arrows, the shields and the swords, the weapons of war. Selah.
That's not in mine.
I know, I'm going to talk about that in a moment.
Okay. Right. You are radiant with light, more majestic than the mountains, rich with game. The valiant lie plundered. They sleep their last sleep. Not one of the warriors can lift his hands. At your rebuke, God of Jacob, both horse and chariot lie still.
It is you alone who are to be feared. Who can stand before you when you are angry? From heaven you pronounced judgment, and the land feared and was quiet. When you, God, rose up to judge, to save all the afflicted of the land. Selah. Surely your wrath against mankind brings you praise, and the survivors of your wrath are restrained.
Make vows to the Lord your God and fulfill them. Let all the neighbouring lands bring gifts to the one to be feared. He breaks the spirit of rulers. He is feared by the kings of the earth.
Okay, well, one of the things... No, there's no perfect Bible translation. Obviously, the Bible originally written in Hebrew and Aramaic and Greek. And translation is an art more than a precise science. And there are translations which are better than others. So we would normally recommend the English Standard Version, or we're now using at church the new NIV, which is more readable than the ESV. But one of the things I find frustrating about the new translation of the NIV is it's taken out this Hebrew word Selah where it appears in the Psalms. And I think it's taken that out because the aim of the NIV is to be as clear as possible, and Selah doesn't really mean anything. So I think they're taken out for clarity. But there's a cost in that, because it's a helpful kind of pausing point. Now, nobody knows what Selah really means. Down in the footnote in the NIV, it says a word of uncertain meaning. We've got a friend who, and we've kind of adopted as a family now, who'd always talk about, I'm having a Selah moment, which would be
Where did that come from? We say that, but why?
From across the road. which would be a kind of a
Across
pause.
the road is code.
Code.
Across which road?
Be a kind of a pause in their life. And the suggestion that's how it was in the psalm. Obviously, thinking of this, reading the psalms as a charismatic, I would read Selah as a moment of kind of spontaneity. So it's a moment, I think, in the psalms where if you're singing a psalm, there'd have been, I think, a musical interlude, which would have been both a moment for reflection and meditation on what has been sung so far, and I think also a moment to kind of freestyle, to be spontaneous. So as charismatics in our worship, we would do this. There might be a moment in between choruses or verses of a song where the musicians would continue to play, we'd stop singing the words of the song, but we might pray out, sing out together the words that the Spirit of God gives us. And for me, I appreciate that in the Psalms, that Selah moment to do that. So I think it should be in there.
Freestyling. Have some water.
Sorry, everybody.
It's the pollen.
Very high pollen today.
Yeah.
Corona. So what about the psalm itself? It's a bit of a tricky one. So as the last couple of psalms have been, it's Asaph talking about big picture stuff in terms of justice, judgment, kingly rule. And I think it's not the easiest psalm for us to engage in, either in the theme or the kind of language that is used. But I think the big picture, what Asaph is talking about again here, is that God is the Lord, that he will rule and be seen to rule over all things, that all other kings, all other powers will be subdued under him, and that is good. That the Lord does pronounce judgment, and he does break the spirits of rulers. He is to be feared by the kings of the earth. God reigns in heaven, and that means he has a far more substantial reign than any earthly ruler, so that's good news. It might be worth just making some comments about this past week, 'cause it has been a week fraught with pain and controversy. Also, there's been a lot that's been said in response to all that happened after the death of George Floyd and all that then has emerged in terms of the protests and statues being toppled and stuff like that. And even here in Poole, some of that with the is Baden-Powell's statue going to be taken away, people sleeping around it to protect it, now being boarded up, so it's there but can't be seen. And these are hugely complex and painful issues. I think big scale, I'd want to say that it's really important that we do recognise, especially those of us who are white and used to living in a white majority culture, need to recognise the reality of racism and how painful often the experience of black people has been, and that's genuine. And I think it can be hard for us who haven't experienced that to really relate to it, because we look at the things that people are articulating and might just say, well, that's just human life, because you and I, as white people, if you're white, would have experienced aggression and hostility from other people, and not because of our colour, but because of just that's life. But there is clearly a racist dynamic in that, which many people of colour have experienced. That's genuine, that's painful. We put up a really helpful link to the Christian rap star Shaylin earlier this week, in him expressing some of his experience and pain in this, and it's really worth reading and listening to. We've one of the things we've been doing is we've just started watching the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as a family, which is now 30 years old, with Will Self. Can't believe it.
Will Smith,
not Will Self. Completely different character. Will Smith. And one of the, I think episode 5 or 6 in that series, Will Smith and his cousin Carlton are driving the Mercedes of an older friend and get pulled by the police and thrown into jail. And it was actually quite shocking, because it was so relevant, so contemporary 30 years on, in terms of, this is the real experience of so many black people in our culture. So we that's got to be first. We recognise the reality of racism and the pain that has caused to so many people of colour in our society. I think another thing I want to say pastorally is just we need to be really wise. As I always say, Facebook is the worst place on which to make comment and discuss this stuff, because there's no nuance, there's no subtlety, and things explode into all kinds of nonsense straight away. And so whatever point you make, whether it has more or less validity, it's going to end up in trouble. So as always, I would counsel you, if you're part of Gateway Church, don't comment on Facebook on this stuff. It's just not helpful. What we need to do is to dialogue and engage with people directly, hear people's pain, and minister the grace of Jesus Christ. And then I think just lastly, in broad picture stuff, is that we do need to fight for the unity of the body. And as a church together, we need to stand united in love for one another, hear one another, be gracious to one another, be kind and forgiving to each other. The world has been very short on forgiveness, genuine tolerance over the past couple of weeks. And as the pressure cooker of lockdown, I think, has exacerbated all that, we need to display the grace of Jesus Christ. And remind ourselves, as this psalm does, that in the end, God is the judge and he will do what is right.
Great.
Sorry, a bit of a ramble. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a big week coming up next week. Shops open on Monday. Premiership football starts on Wednesday.
School
starts back up. You back in school?
Yeah.
Back teaching?
Yeah.
It's also my 50th birthday.
Please pray for all of us as we reach that milestone.
Anything else to add?
No, just pray for us that you will have joy in your heart as you reach your 50th year.
And that our children have joy in their hearts at 5:30 in the morning. That might be a miracle too far. Well, God bless you if you have a garden. I hope you've got some sweet peas growing. Mum, aren't they nice?